A cheating husband chose to dance with his mistress and I chose divorce. Emilia faced the biggest betrayal of her life when she discovered that her husband Charlie was cheating on her. Her world was turned upside down when she saw him choose to dance with another woman, leaving her alone at a party. In desperation and pain, she decides to fight for her family, but faces many difficulties and troubles. This story is full of emotions, struggles and difficult decisions, showing how strong love is and how hard it can be to keep faith in a relationship when trust is broken. My name is Emilia. I am 38 years old and have two teenage daughters, Carolyn and Louise, who are now 14 and 16 respectively. We live in a big city where life is busy, but every day is like the previous one: work, home, kids, routine. It was like that until the day everything changed. It happened 2 years ago, in winter. The party was organized by one of our mutual acquaintances. I always tried to maintain good relations with my husband's friends, because he often invited them home, organized parties, barbecues, and just loved the company. But that evening everything went wrong. That evening, my husband Charlie and I went to this party. Charlie was in a good mood, joking, laughing, hugging me. I felt relaxed too, as I hadn't been out in a long time. My daughters stayed home. They liked to spend evenings alone, watching movies or chatting with their friends on the phone. There were many people at the party whom I knew only superficially. The music was playing loudly, and everyone was dancing and drinking cocktails. Charlie joined his friends, leaving me alone. I decided it was no big deal and started chatting with the other guests. After a while, however, I noticed that Charlie wasn't around. He had disappeared. I started looking for him with my eyes among the dancing couples. Finally, I saw him. He was standing in the corner of the hall, talking to some woman. She was dressed in a brightly colored dress, her hair glistened under the light of the lamps, and her eyes burned with some strange luster. I stepped closer to get a better look. The woman was smiling at him, touching his arm. Charlie's smile was the same as the day he'd first told me he loved me, a smile he hadn't given me in a long time. At that moment, my heart clenched. Something inside told me that there was more between them than just friendly talk. I stood staring at them until they noticed my presence. Charlie quickly looked away and the woman continued laughing as if nothing had happened. It was several minutes before I was able to approach them. When I took a step forward, Charlie had already left, leaving the woman alone. She looked at me defiantly, but said nothing, turned around, and walked away defiantly. I couldn't believe my eyes. What's going on? Why is my husband acting so strangely? Who is this woman? Returning to the table, I tried to calm myself down. I thought that maybe it was all just my fantasies. Maybe I'm putting too much pressure on myself. But soon the music changed and the announcer announced a dance for all the couples. The men were to invite their wives. Charlie came up to me, took my hand, and asked me to dance. I agreed, though I was still seething inside. We walked to the center of the room and started moving to the music. Suddenly I felt someone tugging on Charlie's sleeve. It was the same woman. She asked Charlie to dance with her. He looked at me, then at her, and he said yes. It hurt. It really hurt. I stood alone in the middle of the room, watching my husband dance with another woman. Everyone around me was still having fun, no one noticed my pain. Or maybe they just pretended not to. When the dance was over, Charlie came back to me. I asked him why he'd done that. He tried to explain that it was just an accident, that he hadn't meant to hurt me. But I didn't believe a word he said. A sense of betrayal grew inside me. How could he do such a thing? After all, We'd been together for so many years. We'd been through a lot, raised 2 daughters, built a house. And now it's all falling apart because of one dance? But it wasn't just the dance. It was a signal I couldn't ignore. There was more to it than that. I realized that our relationship was no longer what it used to be. We'd become strangers to each other. Charlie stopped paying attention to me, always at work or with friends. And I was trying to keep the family together, doing everything I could to keep the peace and harmony. After that party, our lives changed. I couldn't trust Charlie anymore. Every time he went to work or out with friends, I imagined him spending time with that woman. We began to fight more often, about everything. The children sensed the tension in the house and tried to spend less time at home, sneaking off to friends' houses or shutting themselves in their rooms. One day the quarrel broke out suddenly, like a spark that turned into a flame. It was a quiet evening, no different from the hundreds of previous evenings spent together. The kids had gone to a friend's house, and we were alone in the living room. I was sitting on the couch, absorbed in reading a book, and Charlie was working on his laptop. Suddenly he looked up and gave me a cold, unfamiliar look. "You always look like that when you're thinking about something," he said, noticing that I was watching him. "What do you mean?" "I'm not looking in any way," I replied, keeping my composure, though his tone was beginning to be unsettling. "No, you're looking. You always look like that when you're thinking about something. What are you trying to say?" He insisted, and his voice was becoming more and more harsh. I set the book aside and met his gaze. "Nothing in particular. Just thinking about the way we live our lives. Does it seem okay to you?" Charlie got up from the table and walked over to me. His face tensed, his lips pressed into a thin line. "What do you mean? What's wrong?" "Well, for one, the fact that you barely pay any attention to me. You're always at work or out with friends. And when you're at home, you're either busy doing your own thing or you're just quiet. Is that a normal life?" I expressed my displeasure. He sighed and sat down across from me. His eyes narrowed and I could feel the tension in the room rising. "You're always disgruntled. Always finding a reason to complain. Maybe you're just bored. Or do you want me to sit here all day and entertain you?" "I'm not asking you to sit at home all day. I just want you to be with me when you're here. So we can talk, go out. I want you to be interested in what's going on in my life. You haven't asked me out in a long time." "Yeah, that's how it is," he exclaimed, getting up from his chair. "So I'm not good enough for you? Do you want another man?" "No, Charlie, that's not what I meant." Those words hit me. "So I'm just an obligation to you? Just a wife to be there when it's convenient for you?" He remained silent, turned and left, slamming the door loudly. I was left alone. It became clear that even a small amount of attention was too much for him. After the fight, I decided to take the ultimate step. I packed my things and left the house. I didn't know where to go, but I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. I needed time to sort myself out and figure out what to do next. A few days went by. I was staying at a friend's house, trying to come to my senses. One night, the phone rang. It was Charlie. He asked me to meet him to talk. I hesitated for a long time, but finally agreed. We met at a cafe not far from our house. Charlie looked tired and depressed. He started to say that he was sorry for what had happened, that he wanted to make things right. But I didn't believe his words anymore. All I wanted to hear was the truth. And that's when he told her. Yes, he did have an affair with this woman. They met at a bar he went to with some friends after work. They exchanged a few words, had a few beers and exchanged phone numbers. The next day she texted him to see how he was doing and they started texting. A month later, they met at a motel. Their relationship lasted several months. He realized what he was doing was wrong, but he couldn't stop. He promised me that it was over and that he wanted to start over. I looked at him and said what I should have said a long time ago: I want a divorce. The words came out on their own, without hesitation. I saw Charlie's face change. He tried to object, but I'd already made up my mind. No more compromises, no more trying to save what was already broken. We drove away in silence. I went back to my friend's house, and Charlie went home. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed, the phone rang. It was Charlie. He was drunk and talking incoherently. At first I thought he was calling to apologize, but then I heard his voice. You think you can just walk away? You're nothing. I'm not going to let you take the kids. No one needs you but me. Those words burned me from the inside out. I'd never heard him insult me like that before. It was like he was a completely different person. That call was the last straw. I hung up the phone and never answered his calls again. However, his mistakes did not end there. A couple days after we met, I found out that Charlie was seeing the same woman again. He thought I wouldn't find out, but the rumors quickly reached me. That was the final blow. I realized he wasn't going to change his behavior. His promises were lies. The next day, I called a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. The children took the news hard, especially the youngest daughter, Carolyn. It was hard for her to understand why her parents had decided to separate. The eldest, Louise, supported me, although it was not easy for her either. The divorce promised to be a real ordeal. The lawyer warned me that there would be a lot of formalities and bureaucratic procedures. The first thing I had to do was to file an application with the court. There I had to clearly state the reasons for the divorce and my wishes about how we will divide the property and who will get the children. We had a good life, so dividing it up would not be an easy task. We had a house, cars, bank accounts, and all sorts of small assets. It all had to be valued and divided equally. The house we had lived in for so many years had to be sold. The money from the sale was divided equally, but that didn't make up for the loss of the sense of security and stability that the house provided. Cars, furniture, art, everything was appraised and divided. Some things of sentimental value ended up in dispute. For example, a painting we bought on our first vacation together sparked a fierce debate. In the end, Charlie kept it and I was compensated with money. The hardest part was, of course, the children. Both of us wanted them to stay with us. The lawyer advised me to gather more documents to prove that I was a good mother and could provide them with a better future. I brought income certificates, medical records, testimonials from teachers and psychologists. Since I was making less than Charlie, the lawyer helped me get child support. We discussed insurance for the kids, tuition, and other expenses. If we couldn't work it out on our own, we'd have to go to court. The judge would review all the paperwork and make a final decision on property and custody. The process culminated in the last court hearing where the judge approved our agreement. It was the moment I realized that my old life was over. I was now free, but also alone. The children were staying with me. I realized that they would have to adjust to their new living arrangements. Charlie would be able to see the kids on weekends and take them on holidays. Now I just had to hope that Charlie would honor the terms. If not, I was ready to go back to court and make him honor the agreement. 2 years passed. Charlie found a new job and moved to another city. We occasionally talk on the phone, discussing matters concerning the children. Our relationship has become cold but civilized. The children have adapted to their new life. They live with me but see their father regularly. Louise has gone to college and Carolyn is graduating from high school. They have grown up to be strong and independent girls, despite all the hardships they have had to endure. As for me, I found a new job, started playing sports, completely changed my environment, and started meeting new people. Life goes on, and I realized that breaking up with Charlie was an inevitable step. Maybe one day I'll meet someone with whom I can build a new, happy relationship. But for now, I'm enjoying my freedom and independence. It's never worth it to endure humiliation and betrayal to keep a family together. A family should be built on mutual respect and trust. If it is not, it is better to break the vicious circle and start all over again. Life is short, and everyone has the right to happiness.